I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let me take you to the NPR site. And it reads, Senate report faults paralysis by Obama team on 2016 Russian election scheme. It says Russia's attack on the 2016 presidential election caught then President Barack Obama off guard, and he and advisors were partly paralyzed with indecision over how to respond, a new Senate report concludes. The study by the Senate Select Committee of Intelligence found that the government was not well postured at the time Obama's administration began to detect and access the wave of active measures launched by Russia against the presidential race. Moreover, the highly partisan environment, unanswered questions about the extent of Russian capabilities, official dithering, and more constrained the Obama response, the report said. Frozen by paralysis of analysis, hamstrung by constraints both real and perceived, Obama officials debated courses of action without truly taking one, said Intelligence Committee Chairman Richard Burr, Republican, North Carolina. So, Alexander, looks like the couple $1,000s spent by the Russians on Facebook really stumped the Obama administration, didn't it?
Well, indeed, absolutely. If you want to believe these fairy tales, then you can read the Senate Intelligence Report. What I will simply say is this. The first thing I will say about it is this. This report is an almost exact transcription of a long article which appeared in the Washington Post back in June 2017. It really barely goes beyond any of the things that was said there. That was a massive article which outlined, the Obama administration's alleged response to the alleged Russian interference in the election. And it made all the same points. And indeed, it went into much more detail than this report does. And one of the weird things about this report is that the public version of it is full of redactions. And in fact, you can actually fill most of the gaps from those redactions by going back to the earlier Washington Post article, and you will find that many of the things that have been redacted are actually set out there in black and white. But I mean, can I say again, this is a fairy tale story. The idea that the Obama administration was sitting passively, that they were completely taken by surprise, that they never expected that the Russians would do all the wicked things that the Russians were supposedly doing at this time, that they were paralyzed and indecisive, is a complete fairy tale. The whole story starts with supposedly Brennan, the CIA director, in August 2016, waking up to the fact that there is supposedly Russian meddling in the election, contacting Obama and allegedly trying to get the Obama administration to respond to all of this. Now, this is, again, the version that we got from the Washington Post article. And in the Washington Post article, but not in the Senate Intelligence Report, but that's clearly what it's referred to, the argument was that they were getting all this information from this medium level spy that the CIA was running in the Russian presidential administration, who was supposedly reporting to them about Putin's direct instructions. And supposedly Brennan sent all this information directly to Obama in a sealed envelope, and this all got the whole thing rolling. Well, we've already discussed this spy. We've pointed out in our videos that we know exactly who he now is, thanks to the Russians. We know exactly the position he had in the executive office, the department of the Russian government he was working for, that he was a foreign policy advisor to one of Putin's foreign policy advisors, a man called Ushakov, that it is inconceivable that he had access to Putin's direct instructions to his intelligence officials in the way that has been alleged, and that story in itself doesn't make any sense. We also pointed out that this mysterious individual, who isn't mysterious at all, is now living perfectly openly in the United States, where he bought an expensive house in a way that suggests that there is no real concerns about keeping his identity secret or his whereabouts secret from the Russians. So that fails already. But August 2016, anyway, cannot have been the time when all this started. We know that the FBI starts Crossfire Hurricane investigation. This is the investigation that leads to all the surveillance of Donald Trump's campaign team on the 31st of July 2016. That is at least a week, probably more than a week, before Brennan is supposed to have done any of the things that he's supposed to have done in this report. And before 31st of July 2016, we had all the various things that were going on already. We had Christopher Steele working on his report. We had Joseph Mifsud baiting George Papadopoulos in London. We had Stefan Halper also trying to bait George Papadopoulos in London. We had all those people like Miss Took, if she really is a real person, all of those people active and involved, and all kinds of surveillance going on. Clearly there was surveillance, and all of this far precedes August 2016. And we also know from John Durham, who has been looking into all of this on behalf of the Justice Department, that he doesn't accept that it all began in the way that is being alleged on the 31st of July 2016, let alone August 2016. So this whole Washington Post Senate Intelligence Committee report, you have to suspend a huge amount of disbelief, a huge amount of disbelief to believe in it. I mean, it just doesn't add up. And I don't buy it or take it at all seriously. It looks to me like an attempt by certain Obama officials, including Brennan, by the way, to try to put more life into the Russiagate theory, and also to try and blame the Republicans for some of the things that went wrong. However, there are 3 points that I would take away from this report, which are interesting. Firstly, we have the confirmation of Brennan's central role in this whole business. I mean, he is the person who supposedly comes along. He is the person who is supposedly activating, all the higher actions by the Obama administration. He is the person who was directly involved in contacting Obama himself. So this is the first official confirmation, if you like, from the US government that Director Brennan, was himself a central player in all of this. The second, which I find very bizarre, is that this whole catalogue of events which supposedly lead to Russian meddling in the US election, alleged Russian meddling in the election, is supposed to have started with the Russian grant of asylum to Edward Snowden. This is the date, this is the event that is supposed to have started the deterioration in relations between the US and Russia, which supposedly culminated in all of this. Well, that is very interesting. I'm sure the Russians don't see it like that at all. They could point to lots of other things, but it does show how important for the US intelligence community Edward Snowden is to this story. And I can't get away from this feeling also that it explains so much about the anger and the desire for revenge against the Russians that is connected to the fact that they granted asylum to Snowden. The third thing is that the Obama administration, deciding to do all sorts of things supposedly in response to what the Russians were doing, kept this information within a very small, tight circle of officials, and they didn't keep notes of all the things that happened when these officials met. I mean, the officials, by the way, include, well, clearly Obama at some level, but also Susan Rice, Samantha Power at some level also, Brennan and Comey, and of course Loretta Lynch must have been involved at some level. So these people were all meeting and talking to each other and meeting with, trying to influence various senior people in Congress, but there is no paper trail. And I find that very remarkable. If you know anything about how bureaucracies work, you will know how, when people do not keep written records of meetings, that is an infallible sign that they are concealing something. I mean, there is no other explanation for it. And in fact, you have two senators, both Democrats, and they both add appendices to this report in which they both complain about the fact that there is a lack of a paper trail. And we've discussed many times in our programs on the Duran the fact that Barack Obama himself has managed to keep his own role in much of what went on secret. And here we have evidence of secret meetings, well, not secret meetings exactly, but meetings going on within the White House, meetings where Obama presumably was at least present in some of them, or at least some of his officials were, and no record of any instructions is kept, and no record of any discussions is kept. And, I would want to know why. I would, want to see all of these people properly questioned, not by sympathetic and gullible senators intent on reconstructing and validating the Russiagate conspiracy theory in some form. I would really want to know why there were no written records of these meetings, and that requires proper questioning by proper trained investigators. And I hope John Durham eventually gets around to doing that.
Okay, so they weren't concealing anything, Alexander. In my opinion, they were concocting. I think the names that you mentioned, Samantha Power, Rice, Lynch, Obama, I think they were getting together to figure out a way to submarine the Trump campaign. And they were concocting the whole Russia narrative, or at least they were kicking it around. Let's not forget it was Power who was unmasking people. It was Loretta Lynch meeting with Bill Clinton on the tarmac. And then you have this dead giveaway from the NPR article. Once again, a quote from Susan Rice. And I think this is what gives it away. Obama and advisors feared that revealing Russia's active measures might undermine America's confidence in the election or open Democrats up to accusations that Obama might be trying to help Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump. Russia launched a wave of active measures aimed at helping Trump and hurting Clinton. Eventually, the administration did publicly announce that assessment, one later strengthened by subsequent reports from the intelligence community, the Senate Intelligence Committee, and Special Counsel Robert Mueller. I'm laughing a little bit there because if anyone saw Mueller's testimony, strengthened by, okay. I think it was definitely not strengthened by Mueller or the intelligence community, that's for sure.
No. But that whole story is absolute and complete baloney. That's a complete rewriting of history. And I was following the 2016 election. The story that it was the Russians who were leaking the information to WikiLeaks and it was a Russian disinformation campaign was all over the place. It was all over the place in the run-up to the election. And of course, in October, the intelligence community actually published this extraordinary assessment, which was, a public document in which they endorsed it. They actually said that this was all going on. Now, to say that, they were trying to keep it secret when, they're publicizing it through leaks in the media, because there were leaks all over the media right through the 2016 election, when the intelligence community was actually publishing a big report about this in October 2016. You may remember, Alex, I actually analyzed it and I discussed how incredibly manipulative the language of that report was, how they were also and we know about this both from the Washington Post article of June 2017, and it's confirmed here. They were going around talking to every conceivable Republican senator, all the officials in all, the election officials right across the United States who were going to be in charge of administering the election themselves. The suggestion that it was all being kept secret and that they were all worried that if they didn't keep it secret, that it would actually somehow compromise people's confidence in the election. It's absolute nonsense. They were doing everything they possibly could to make it public and open without actually, Obama himself coming out and making a public statement about it, which would have been seen, I think, by most people in the United States as open interference in the election. So they did everything they could. And it wasn't just, of course, the intelligence community and the people in the Obama administration. You also had Glenn Simpson going around touting with Christopher Steele's dossier, and they were knocking on the doors of all the various newspapers and media groups, and they were circulating and inflating this story as much as they could. So, let's not take all that nonsense seriously. They tried incredibly hard to make it the big issue in the election. The reason it didn't work was because enough Americans either saw through it and didn't believe it and cared about other more important things. So, we mustn't let ourselves be swept along by all of this. There were a few other points I would make, by the way, about all of that, which is, of course, there is this admission that, they were looking to do some kind of dramatic thing to scare and offend the Russians. And, of course, Obama had a meeting with Putin in Hangzhou in China at the G20 summit, in which he supposedly confronted Putin. And again, the account of this meeting in the Senate Intelligence Committee report, and by the way, in the Washington Post article, again rewrites history. If you were reporting on it at the time, as we at the Duran were, the primary purpose of that meeting was to discuss Syria and a peace plan for Syria, which wasn't actually a peace plan, that Obama was bringing along and which Putin rejected. And that caused a huge row between the two men. And no doubt, of course, Obama brought up the business of Russian interference, and Putin emphatically rejected that there was any Russian interference. And the Senate Intelligence Committee turns round and makes Putin's denial into further proof that Russian interference was going on. And you have this extraordinary statement, which undoubtedly reflects Obama's own views about Putin, about how Obama found Putin, somehow tricky and evasive and dishonest and, flagrant and all these sort of things. But again, it takes extraordinary manipulation of thought and language to take a denial and make it into some kind of proof of something, which is what this report does. So we mustn't let this entire rewriting of history, which is what this report is all about, carried out for a very clear partisan purpose, influence us and make us believe things which are obviously not true.
All right, well, let me get to Susan Rice's part. Officials, and this is once again from NPR, officials from the Obama era told Senate investigators they moved as fast as they reasonably could. Then National Security Advisor Susan Rice, for example, is quoted in the report making clear that she believed the right decision was to wait until the case was airtight before acting. Quote, "That took longer than we would have hoped or anticipated," she said, "but you couldn't have it bad. You had to have it when it was done and ready, and that was the intelligence community's to determine," end quote. So I think the giveaway in all of this was, as you were saying, Alexander, the fact that they're coming out in this report and they're saying that they were, working together to figure out how deep and how extensive Russia's meddling was. And I think that's just pure projection. And they didn't want to come out with it because they didn't want to help Hillary Clinton. So I think that's pure projection. What they were actually doing was helping Hillary Clinton. They were making up the whole Russia meddling thing. to once again derail Donald Trump. So I think they're just kind of flipping the tables there. They know what they did. And then you have Susan Rice's quote where she's essentially saying that we had to sit on it until it was airtight. I also think that's the dead giveaway. I think they were sitting on it because they thought that Clinton was going to win and there was going to be no need to trot out the now infamous insurance plan. So I think once Trump shocked the world, that's when they put everything into play. So, I mean, I think it's a dead giveaway. Susan Rice kind of hints at it. And there's no doubt that this whole thing was being concocted in the Obama Oval Office.
Yeah, I mean, they were vastly escalated it after the election. We had all this massive amounts of leaks all over the place. And of course, we had the unmasking of Trump people, which Susan Rice and Samantha Power were incredibly active in doing, which has caused so much trouble for so many people in the Trump campaign, people like Carter Page, completely innocent of anything, Michael Flynn, completely innocent of anything. But of course, it did begin before. And can I come back to what you were saying? You were saying earlier that when, what they were actually doing was essentially concocting the Russiagate hoax. That was why no records were kept. Well, I'm inclined to agree with you, because why else have no paper trail? The absence of a paper trail conceals, or it seems to be intended to conceal something. If these people were getting together and were saying to each other, well, clearly there's something terribly wrong, the Russians are up to no good, we've got to come up with some kind of measured response to all of this, why not write it down in the normal way? Why not discuss it through the normal procedures of the US government? Why not properly consult Congress? Why not discuss it with Donald Trump himself? He was never, in fact, we know this from Horowitz, he was never, in fact, formally consulted. He was never given a protective briefing. Why not do these things? They didn't do any of those things. They kept it to this very small, arbitrarily picked group of people who meet informally or semi-formally, and there are no notes. I mean, that's, to my mind, as somebody who's worked inside state bureaucracies, that is astonishing. That suggests something going on entirely outside the proper chain of responsibility. And when that kind of thing happens in a bureaucracy, you get very worried and very concerned about what's going on. And as I said, I come back to this, it's simply not true that they tried to keep the whole Russian interference a secret. It was all over the media at the time. I mean, I remember reading about it all over the place. And of course, as I said, I think it was on the 6th of October, there was the intelligence community published a statement about it, which Comey, by the way, the reason he didn't sign it was not because he didn't agree with it, but because he was scared that it actually violated the Hatch Act, which forbids interference in the run-up to an election. He was worried it was illegal, not because it was incomplete, but it was actually a legal thing to do. And being Comey, he was always scared about doing things like that. But obviously, after the election, when Trump unexpectedly won, they went into total overdrive. And I have no doubt that the reason they went into overdrive was to delegitimize his election victory, hoping that the Electoral College could be swayed not to appoint him president, elect him president, and then afterwards to try and discredit him even further, and to try to conceal all the things they had been doing in the run-up to the election and after, by getting us all to talk about the fact that there was this so-called Russiagate scandal, this collusion story, rather than the true scandal, which is that Trump and his people were put under blanket surveillance, as we now know to be the case, and that all kinds of provocations were being staged with Papadopoulos, with Carter Page, with all sorts of other people. So, let's not be swayed or diverted by these false narratives that are being peddled. There are some interesting giveaways in this. As I said, we now see that Brennan was at the center of it. We now see that, as I said, no records of these meetings were kept. We now see that the Republicans were completely unconvinced at the time by the evidence that they were being provided. They didn't find it at all convincing, and that in itself is suggestive. And we also see the very elaborate precautions that were being taken by this group within the White House and the Obama administration to keep the things that they were doing secret. But this is a useful starting point for a proper investigation, which I hope Duran will do, into what actually went wrong and what actually happened.
Okay, so I think the main point of what this Senate report really does tell us, to me, is that this whole thing was hatched in the Obama White House. That's the bottom line. Whether they really wanted to take it as far as they did, or whether this was just kind of a brainstorming session, I think it was all kind of, being kicked around in the Oval Office. I think that's the main point of the Senate report.
It was not a brainstorming session, because we're talking about repeated meetings which took place in this way without proper records being kept. Repeated meetings in the White House by Obama, presumably, and his people. But when important people meet and they discuss these kind of topics, they keep records. If they don't keep records, that is a very concerning thing.
Yeah, but they didn't keep records because they knew what they were doing was bordering on flat out, illegal coup. But I mean, the whole thing
bordering. Well, why say bordering? Perhaps it was illegal.
Well, it was. My point is that Obama was, I remember in the Rose Garden, Obama even said there's no way our elections could get hacked. That's a ridiculous statement to make. I mean, I just think, and I say brainstorm because I just think they were sitting there saying, okay, let's just, put some plan B, C, and D into place just in case that 1% chance that Trump does win happens. That's all I think. I think they had no clue.
No.
What was really taking place, and that Trump was going to win in the way that he did.
Oh, they didn't expect that he.
So for me, this whole thing was just, and when Obama made it much easier for the intelligence communities to share information between each other, all I think that was just, insurance plans after insurance plans after insurance plans, dotting your I's and crossing your T's, just in case.
They didn't expect that he would win. Absolutely, they didn't. In fact, they were sure that Hillary Clinton would win. And that all these campaigns against Trump, I mean, there wasn't just Russiagate. There was that extraordinary leak of that tape about him bragging about his sexual behavior, which again was done in a way that was clearly intended to cause him huge damage. Lots of that was going on. And as I said, they were also under some sort of surveillance at this time. But obviously, when that didn't happen, as I said, they went into overdrive and put into place all the insurance policies that they've been working on. But
that's when they got serious.
Absolutely.
That's when they got serious.
Well, it got far bigger the moment the election was out of, the moment they lost the election. But I come back to this: when people don't keep records, they're hiding something. That's been my invariable practice. Not when meetings take place at this very high level and these supposedly important things are discussed. They're keeping things secret to themselves. They were not providing a paper trail that would come back and implicate them. Now,
my giveaway from the report. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that suggests to me not that borderline illegality, that suggests to me that they were worried about actual illegality, or if not illegality, about things that would be massively embarrassing. Yeah, that's how it looks to me.
For me, it's plain and simple. The minute that they say in the report that they didn't want anything to come out because they were afraid it would make it look like, they were supporting Hillary Clinton. For me, that's the dead giveaway. It means that they were doing stuff to support Hillary Clinton and to undermine Trump. They weren't afraid about anything. They were actually doing it. Well, no doubt about it.
I mean, Barack Obama comes along. Okay, let's go a few steps back in the election. Barack Obama actually came along in the middle of the Hillary Clinton emails investigation. This is the investigation of her use of a private server in which, classified emails went backwards and forwards whilst she was Secretary of State. Barack Obama, as President of the United States, came out and said that, he didn't see any evidence of wrongdoing there because clearly she was acting in good faith. Now, that's him intervening in an election on behalf of Hillary Clinton while she is being investigated by the FBI. So you're going to tell me that he wasn't helping Hillary Clinton? Of course he was, to an incredible degree. So, let's not take these protestations. Oh, we were waiting for a foolproof case. What foolproof case? Where is that foolproof case? Where have we seen any case that comes anywhere close to being foolproof? Waiting for a foolproof case. We didn't want to interfere and give an appearance of partiality. Well, you have as I said, the intelligence community publishing statements in October 2016, which are not intended to help Hillary Clinton. Don't spread these absurd stories. You have the officials in the State Department coming out with other statements during the election, clearly intended to support Hillary Clinton, but that we want a strong person in the presidency. There's massive attempts to help Hillary Clinton. Obama was involved, the State Department was involved, the intelligence community was involved, James Comey and Loretta Lynch were involved. They were working overtime on this. And as I said, they and all the time they're meeting and they're not taking notes.
Okay, Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you very much, guys. If you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on the notifications bell. Smash that like button. Look for us on iTunes and on Soundcloud as well to get an audio copy of this video. And follow us on the Telegram app. You can download Telegram for iPhone and for Android. And also go to the Duran shop and pick up some magic mug and some magic mugs and some merchandise. That also helps this channel out a lot.
Indeed, Abby, we've got all our amazing magic mugs. This is, again, one of my oldest ones. It's got the coat of arms, as you can see, of the Russian Federation of it. So this is the same coat of arms as you'll see on Putin's mugs and plates and cups and saucers and all those things. But as I've said many times, these are wonderful magic mugs, incredibly strong, light. They keep your tea warm, which is, I've been drinking teas of windy, cold day, blustery day in London. And we made a decision. We made a strategic decision when we set up our shop that we would show respect to our viewers upon whom we depend for support by providing them with high quality merchandise and goods. And our famous magic mugs are an example of this. And the reason we do that is because, of course, we not only respect our viewers, but we do understand how dependent ultimately we are on our viewers. Without you, the Duran couldn't exist. So we look to you to support us, and we at the same time show you our respect by providing you with superb mugs like this. And it's not just superb mugs, we also provide you with amazing shirts, like the long sleeve t-shirt I'm wearing now, as it was a cold, blustery day. So you need a warm, comfortable t-shirt like this when you're going out walking your dogs, as I've just been doing. So you've got long sleeve t-shirts, short sleeve t-shirts, v-neck shirts, really smart, elegant polo shirts, which I've worn to some, very, very glittering social occasions, all incredibly comfortable, all incredibly well made, all 100% cotton. Like our mugs, you see how perfect the condition of this mug is after almost a year of heavy use, not a chip, not a crack, not a sign of discoloration. Same is true for all my shirts. I wear them, continuously, and they're all in perfect condition, all as good as new. You can also find all of these things on our shop. You can find also hats, hoodies, and stickers. You can find incredibly informative ebooks. We've got four ebooks in our shop, and we're planning to do more. And you can, which enlarge on all the topics that you will find in our videos. So you support the Duran by coming to our shop. You also become the owner, the proud owner of these great things. You can buy them as gifts for your family and your friends. So support the Duran, benefit yourself. Come to our shop. Alex will tell you how.
Go to the duranshop.com. You'll find the link in the description box down below. Alexander Mercouris, thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.